Public comment will be heard during item number 2 on the agenda. We will dedicate a total of 45 minutes to public comment. Members of the public will have 1 minute per agenda item for a maximum of 2 minutes total. At the request of the speaker will be given 1 additional minute for general public comment for a maximum of 3 minutes total. Members of the public, if you choose to participate in the public comment portion of the agenda, you can participate in this meeting in a number of ways outlined on the agenda. Members of the public who participate in public comment are reminded that they can speak to any item on the agenda or a matter within the jurisdiction of the Board of Police Commissioners. Public comment is your opportunity to address the board, so you're free to express your opinion on matters before the board and to generally express when you disagree with other opinions expressed. However, directing your comments to other individuals who have spoken or attacking others who have expressed their opinions shall be deemed off-topic and your public comment period will be concluded. Message for those attending the meeting in person. These meetings are regular meetings between the board, the department, and key stakeholders. Meetings of the Board of Police Commissioners are open to the public. The state's Ralph M. Brown Act affords the public the opportunity to be present at the meetings, hear the presentations and dialogue in real time, and provide feedback via the public comment period. During these meetings, there's a need for the board to carry out public business expeditiously without delays or disruptions. Members of the audience shall not engage in any conduct which causes an actual disruption of the meeting. Those attending in person are reminded that disruptive behavior will be cause for removal. If you disrupt this meeting, you will be provided with 1 warning to cease disruptive behavior. If you fail to cease such behavior, you will be removed from the meeting. All attendees must be seated. Failure to follow this rule will result in a warning and/or removal from the meeting. With that, we will move to item number 1, the report of the Chief of Police. Chief McDonald.
Good morning, President Suthers, Vice President Shields, Commissioners, Inspector General Barragan, City Attorney De La Guerra, and Mr. Sibley. Today I'll be discussing significant events from the previous 2 weeks, providing a crime update and discussing our personnel strength. And it's been a busy 2 weeks. Before I begin my crime briefing, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the tragic events over the weekend in Baldwin Park. Officer Samuel Riveros was killed in the line of duty over the past weekend, a devastating loss for his family, his department, and our broader law enforcement community. His partner was also wounded in the same incident, but is thankfully expected to make a full recovery. This was a senseless and violent act. The suspect had already taken the life of an innocent civilian before opening fire on responding officers. We stand with the Baldwin Park Police Department and offer our deepest condolences and support during this incredibly difficult time. It's a sobering reminder of the dangers our officers face each and every day simply for answering the call to protect and serve. On May 26, 2025, at approximately 7:15 in the morning, Van Nuys Division uniformed officers responded to a radio call regarding a possible shooting investigation in the 13,000 block of Sherman Way. The comments on the call described a white van with multiple bullet holes in its windshield. When officers arrived, they contacted a female, later identified as Claudia Corrigetto, seated in the driver's seat of a white Chevrolet van. While speaking with Corrigetto, the officers learned that she had a felony warrant and attempted to detain her. Corrigetto resisted and removed what appeared to be a black semi-automatic pistol from her person and pointed it at her throat. The officers redeployed to their vehicle and requested backup. However, Corrigetto drove away from the location. The officers initiated a vehicle pursuit which ultimately terminated in the 20900 block of Arcana Road in Topanga Division. Officers communicated with Corrigetto, who remained in her vehicle, and ordered her to surrender. However, she refused. During the standoff, Corrigetto continued to point the pistol at her throat while also being armed with a large machete. Metropolitan Division Special Weapons and Tactics personnel were notified. However, prior to their arrival, Corrigetto began walking toward the front door of a residence while still holding the pistol and the machete, and at which time an officer-involved shooting occurred. Corrigetto was struck by gunfire and collapsed near the entryway of the residence. Corrigetto was eventually taken into custody by SWAT personnel and immediately treated by Los Angeles Fire Department paramedics who were staged at scene. She was transported by rescue ambulance to a local hospital where she was treated for her wounds. No officers or community members were injured during the incident. The investigation determined Corrigetto was in possession of a BB gun designed to resemble a Glock semi-automatic pistol. A metal machete approximately 30 inches in length was also recovered at scene. Force Investigation Division investigators responded to the scene and are investigating this incident. On May 28th, 2025, about 3:20 in the morning, Olympic Patrol Division uniformed officers responded to a radio call of a robbery in progress at Winchell's Donuts located in the 1700 block of Southwestern Ave. The comments of the call indicated the suspect, later identified as Christopher Hall, was armed with a gun, and he possibly assaulted a female worker. Once officers arrived at the location, they were directed by witnesses and an LAPD area unit to Hall's location, who had run from the business to an adjacent apartment complex. Hall proceeded to a narrow pathway north of the building while still armed with the handgun. Officers contacted Hall and ordered him to drop his weapon. Hall refused and pointed his handgun at the officers, resulting in an officer-involved shooting. Hall was not struck. However, he dropped his handgun and climbed over a nearby fence. As Hall fled north, an officer deployed a taser. Hall fell to the ground and was taken into custody without further incident. As a result of the taser deployment, Hall was placed into a recovery position and monitored by officers until the arrival of Los Angeles Fire Department personnel. Hall was transported by rescue ambulance to a local hospital where he was treated and released for booking. A black airsoft replica handgun was recovered at scene and booked as evidence. The victim of the robbery sustained minor injuries. She was treated at scene by Los Angeles Fire Department personnel. No officers or other community members were injured as a result of this incident. Force Investigation Division investigators responded to the scene and continue to investigate this incident. Year to date, we've had 17 officer-involved shootings compared to 14 at this time last year, which is an increase of 21.4%. A pursuit resulting in a collision on May 21st, approximately 9:30 in the morning. Harbor Area Patrol officers received an automated license plate reader hit on a silver Kia Sportage reported stolen in the area. Officers located the vehicle and began following it while waiting for backup units to arrive. The driver, later identified as Jacob Chapman, began driving erratically, so the officers initiated a vehicle pursuit in the area of Western Avenue and Summerlin Street. The pursuit continued through surface streets and came to an end near 6th Street and Gaffey Street when Chapman lost control of the vehicle and crashed into multiple parked cars, which were unoccupied. Following the collision, Chapman exited the vehicle and attempted to flee on foot. However, due to injuries sustained in the crash, he was unable to run and stumbled to the ground where officers took him into custody. A female passenger was found seated inside the vehicle. Both Chapman and the passenger sustained fractured limbs and were transported to a local hospital for treatment. The multidisciplinary collision investigation team responded to the scene and is handling the investigation. Jacob Chapman was booked for felony evading. On May 26th, about 2 in the afternoon, North Hollywood patrol officers were responding code 3 with lights and siren activated to a domestic dispute call at 6705 Riverton Avenue involving a restraining order, suspect there now. While traveling eastbound on Satakoy from Vineland, the officers approached an intersection at Cleon Avenue. At that moment, a gray Honda Accord attempted to make a left turn onto Satakoy from Cleon, crossing into the officer's path. This resulted in the police vehicle broadsiding the Honda on the driver's side. The intersection at Cleon and Satakoy is a T intersection and is controlled by a single stop sign for northbound traffic on Cleon Avenue. There is no traffic control devices for eastbound or westbound traffic on Satakoy at this intersection. At the scene, the driver of the Honda, identified as Jose Hernandez, remained inside the vehicle and required extraction by Los Angeles Fire Department. Sadly, Hernandez was pronounced deceased at the scene. Both officers were transported to a local hospital and treated for non-life-threatening injuries. The multidisciplinary collision investigation team responded and is currently handling the investigation. On the evening of Saturday, May 24th, officers in Newton Division were assigned to conduct focused patrols targeting illegal warehouse parties in the northern section of the division. During the operation, officers observed a large gathering in the area of 16th Street and Trinity Street. Upon closer inspection, they discovered an illegal rooftop party spanning 2 adjacent commercial buildings. Further investigation revealed the event was a punk rock concert promoted widely across social media platforms, drawing hundreds from across Southern California. Supervisors and additional units were summoned to develop an appropriate response. Simultaneous patrol officers were dispatched to the same location after receiving multiple calls reporting a disturbance and a potential fire. One of the callers, the property owner, confirmed that no one had permission to be on the premises and asked police to remove all trespassers. Another concerned resident estimated the crowd to be as large as 1,000 people and expressed worry about the safety of the rooftop structure. As the situation escalated, officers coordinated with the fire department, which declined to enter due to the large active crowd. Air Support conducted an assessment and made public address announcements, but the crowd responded aggressively, firing fireworks at the helicopter, igniting a second fire, and throwing bottles at officers. At this point, a help call was generated and additional resources were requested. The amount of resources used to manage this event included a captain, 2 lieutenants, 11 sergeants, and approximately 140 police officers. Command personnel on scene emphasized de-escalation and the use of time to reduce tensions. Despite repeated verbal orders to disperse, most of the crowd remained. Violence intensified as Molotov cocktails and other projectiles were thrown at officers. Teams of officers equipped with less lethal options advanced methodically, clearing the rooftops and eventually securing an overwatch position. However, the crowds of people spilled out onto city streets and refused to leave the area. As participants moved down the street level, the atmosphere grew even more hostile. Officers declared an unlawful assembly and issued dispersal orders via public address systems. Skirmish lines were established to control and move the crowd out of the area. As officers attempted to hold key intersections, new challenges emerged. Individuals began damaging property, vandalizing local businesses, and interfering with MTA trains. Officers shifted strategies using mobile units to respond to flare-ups of unruly crowds while maintaining their skirmish lines to prevent further escalation. In total, the incident spanned approximately 4 hours before it was able to be brought under control. Over the course of the incidents, 4 officers sustained injuries ranging from chemical exposure and impact wounds to abrasions from glass bottles being thrown. Numerous public and private properties were vandalized, including local restaurants, a dialysis center, a school wall, a police vehicle, and metro trains. In total, officers deployed approximately 132 rounds of 40-millimeter less lethal munitions and 37 rounds of 37-millimeter munitions. All uses were target-specific and documented through the appropriate use of force investigation process and captured with body-worn video. At this time, no injuries involving community members have been reported. Multiple crime reports were completed for vandalism and assault on officers. Detectives are reviewing all video and evidence recovered at the scene to identify and apprehend all of those involved. On another issue, on a No Borders Task Force, due to the increase in the large-scale unruly parties in our industrial area, we launched a No Borders Task Force to seek out and shut down these large-scale events. This past weekend, Central and Newton area participated in this task force. The concept is the use of plainclothes officers to patrol problematic warehouse party locations in the Newton and Central areas. Officers from both Newton and Central Vice units were used, along with our gang enforcement officers, to act as chase units. At about 21:30 hours, a large party was located at 1013 East 14th Street, an unpermitted gang party at the Undisputed Motorcycle Clubhouse. Approximately 60 to 70 people were in attendance, and the party was broken up after it was determined that the location was unlicensed for music and alcohol service. At 22:45 hours, Newton Vice worked 33rd and Main, while Central Vice focused on 2 planned events at 18th and Hope and 9th and Olive. Visible presence in our Chase black and white units deterred the further activity at those sites. At just after midnight, a large party was located on the rooftop of a parking structure at Olympic and Maple. The party was shut down by Newton and Central Vice and GED, with approximately 120 electronic music attendees, a DJ, a stage, and a light show. Shortly afterward, officers responded to a gang-related party at Hill and Jefferson. As officers attempted to break up the crowd, they were met with resistance, including bottles being thrown at them. Skirmish lines were formed to safely disperse the crowd. Several firearms were recovered from inside the venue, which was rented out for a known gang celebration of the 8 Trey gang members. While this was unfolding, a shooting occurred nearby at 33rd and Broadway. It was initially believed that officers may have been targeted, prompting a second help call. Officers quickly secured the scene, formed another skirmish line, and ensured the safe transport of the victim. During this incident, a use of force occurred. One arrest was made for assault on an officer. As you can imagine, all of these various parties are drawing resources from around the city that are very precious as they are, which takes officers out of the field and unable to provide the level of service that they otherwise would be able to. So we are taking it very seriously. These various parties that we've seen will be working with the city attorney's office on potential abatement proceedings, as well as filings for misdemeanor offenses, and working with the district attorney for those we can identify as felony offenders. The department continues to closely monitor local, national, and global events, particularly in light of the ongoing conflict between Israel and Gaza. Just yesterday in Boulder, Colorado, an Egyptian national attacked a pro-Israel demonstration using Molotov cocktails and a makeshift flamethrower, injuring 8 people. This followed a May 21st attack in Washington, D.C., where a gunman shot 2 Israeli embassy staffers while shouting "Free Palestine." Both attackers appear to have been ideologically motivated. Following these incidents, we increased high-visibility patrols near Jewish synagogues, schools, and neighborhoods across Los Angeles to reassure our communities and deter further threats. In addition, the department continuously evaluates the broader threat environment, including the risk of lone actors inspired by violent extremism, whether ideologically driven, anti-government, anti-authority, or racially motivated. One of our most effective tools in preventing these attacks is the information we receive from the community. We actively investigate all credible tips, leads, and online threats, and remain in constant coordination with our federal and local partners to assess national incidents for any potential impact here in Los Angeles. On another very disturbing topic, hate crime and Rampart Division. Since April 8th, Rampart area has been investigating a series of violent and escalating hate crimes targeting a transgender woman who owns and resides above a small business on 6th Street. Over the span of 5 separate incidents ranging from attempted sexual assault and aggravated assaults to a robbery with a firearm, she's been repeatedly victimized by the same group of suspects. These attacks have included verbal slurs, physical violence with weapons, and most recently on May 31st, an attempted shooting during a robbery in which $30,000 was taken from the residence. One suspect was identified and arrested on May 27th and remains in custody, which confirms that he did not participate in the May 31st attack. 2 suspects remain outstanding, and detectives are working diligently to identify and apprehend them. Investigative steps have included the release of surveillance images, DNA and fingerprint collection, coordination with specialized units, including our Gang and Narcotics Division, to locate the suspects. This series is being investigated as a hate crime, but we are requesting the public's assistance in locating the suspects, and any help that the public could provide in identifying these suspects, allowing them to be held accountable for what they're doing, would be greatly appreciated. We'd ask anybody with information to contact LAPD Rampart Division detectives at 213-484-3495. We had an MTA security attack on May 31st, approximately 18:15 hours. 2 armed, uniformed security officers for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority were attacked by an individual armed with a knife in a parking lot adjacent to the MTA North Hollywood station, located at Chandler and Lancashire. In defense of their lives, at least one of the security officers fired at the suspect, resulting in multiple hits. The suspect, later identified as Kevin Miranda, was taken into custody. The security officers were transported to Northridge Hospital. One was treated and released. The other remains in the hospital in critical condition. Miranda was transported to Holy Cross Hospital with multiple gunshot wounds. He remains in the hospital in critical but stable condition, and is under guard. The suspect knife, as well as ballistic evidence, and the security officer's firearms were collected at the scene. Robbery Homicide Division detectives will present the case to the District Attorney's Office for filing consideration for attempted murder charges against Miranda. For the week ending May 31st, over the last 4 weeks spanning May 4th through 31st, overall crime in Los Angeles saw a decrease. Combined persons and property crimes were down 8.5%, or 721 fewer incidents compared to the previous 4-week period. Property crime specifically dropped by over 11%, a reduction of 732 incidents, while persons crimes remained relatively flat, with a small increase of 0.6% or 11 additional cases. Homicides year-to-date continue to show a positive trend, with a 24.8% reduction compared to last year, or 30 fewer lives lost in 2025. When we look at victims shot citywide, we're down nearly 11% compared to the same time last year, with 47 fewer victims. However, we did see a slight increase, 4.5%, in victims shot in the last 4 weeks. Notably, 77th Street again saw a significant concentration, with 18 shooting victims compared to just 3 for the prior month. A single gang-related incident at 1540 West Florence accounted for 2 homicides and several victims. We continue to monitor activity and deploying additional resources to the area. Aggravated assaults rose 5.1% citywide over the last 4 weeks. Robberies, however, were down 6%, and strong-arm robberies and robberies involving firearms both saw double-digit decreases. Firearms recovered are up 2.2% year-to-date. Burglaries continue to trend downward, with a 14.2% reduction citywide, or 128 fewer incidents compared to the same period last year. Residential burglaries totaling 490, or a 13.9% decrease, with 79 fewer incidents. Non-residential burglaries also saw a 13.9% drop, with 280 reported, which is 42 fewer incidents than last year. Motor vehicle thefts also declined by nearly 8% citywide, or 126 fewer vehicles taken. On to our personnel strength. Our sworn personnel as of June 2nd is 8,746. Our civilian staffing is 2,664, and our reserve officers are deployed at 358. That concludes my presentation to the commission this morning, Mr. President.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you for the public statement you issued and this morning's remarks regarding the loss of Baldwin Park Officer Riveros, a 9-year veteran who unfortunately lost his life in the line of duty this past week. I do have a couple questions. I'd like to go back to the MTA attack. Were those uniformed security officers, and do we know what the motive was for that attack?
They were uniformed security officers, contract security officers for MTA, working for, I believe, directly for a large contract security agency. The suspect in that case, I believe, had some kind of a complaint about being cited, walked up and then expressed himself, and then pulled out a knife and began attacking the 2 security officers.
Thank you, and thank you for the update on the 5 incidents that victimized a transgender woman in Westlake Village. Is there any further on that investigation regarding the outstanding suspects?
We're fortunate in that they were able to capture some very clear video of the suspects' faces, and we're working with getting that word out to the community and trying to be able to solicit help from members of the community who may know these individuals. We're also working it from the forensic side with fingerprint and DNA analysis as well. So we have a lot of resources being focused on this. It's being taken very seriously, and very sorry about what's continued to occur in this situation.
Thank you. And Chief, as you know, we've had several, I'll say, juvenile age bike crews across the city that have become increasingly violent, known to stop people who are at traffic lights, stop signs, vandalize their car. When they get out of the car, they're assaulted, and they're now committing robberies. Do we have a similar task force that's addressing these bike crews and what can be done? I get calls from people who ask what can be done about them. They're being detained, and they're underage, and they're typically arrested detained and released at the scene. So is there anything that could be done about that?
Yeah, we're fairly limited, as you know, as far as our interaction with juvenile suspects. We do what we can, given the tools that we have. We try and identify the individuals, and then to be able to work back and deal with their parents, school officials where that's appropriate, and to be able to let them know we're watching them and hold them accountable to the degree that we're able to do that. We don't have a citywide task force, to my knowledge, that is working that. That's being done at the area level. But I know our folks from area to area are communicating with information involving these different incidents that we've seen too frequently.
Thank you. And the last question I have, Chief, what's our deployment strength for the Pacific Palisades as it's been reopened, and how long will we have to maintain that posture?
Yeah, that's a great question. When we reopened PCH, that was great for the businesses along PCH, but created a major challenge for the LAPD in that we now had an additional number of checkpoints that we had to staff, intersections that had to be closed down to prevent access to the Palisades, which is still a closed area. And so we have now roughly 120 police officers out there during a 24-hour period, most manning checkpoints, the others doing crime suppression throughout the Palisades area. In addition, we have a number of CHP officers that are still deployed, and the National Guard have been with us since the very beginning. They're demobilizing, and so we'll be doing it without them. But we couldn't be more thankful for the help and assistance that we've received from the state, particularly with the National Guard and the California Highway Patrol. They have been great partners right from the very first day.
Thank you. Vice President Shields.
Thank you, Chief, for that very thorough report. You actually anticipated some of the questions that I had, but I'll, first, as with President Suthers, I also want to take a minute to give my condolences to the Baldwin Park Police Department for their loss of their officer, having just been through the memorial ceremony to commemorate the loss of our 239 officers in the same month. To have to deal with another loss close to home is difficult, and condolences to all of those dealing with that loss. With regards to, I was also going to ask about, what actions we were taking after the despicable attack that occurred in Colorado against the Jewish community. And so it's good to know that the department has increased patrol to make sure our, Jewish community members feel safe. And I think that we should be mindful for any time there's any type of protest to know, regardless of what side the protest is on, to be careful and watch out for similar types of copycat attacks, because that's very disturbing and very scary. With regards to the illegal warehouse parties, the one that had, I think it was 1,000 or so participants, I see the frustration of some community members who say, like, was anyone even arrested in that, especially given, officers sustained injuries, things like that. Can you talk a little bit about the strategy of whether or not arrests could be made, or, the purpose of delaying that until further investigation?
Yeah, no, certainly an understandable question anybody would have when you have something to this degree. Why weren't arrests made that night? This incident, the one you're referring to, the first one, and likewise with subsequent arrests, this did not occur in a vacuum. So you're pulling people from a very busy night throughout the city, responding to a help call at a location where particularly this one officer that first night was struck in the face with a bottle. The crowd was throwing, as I mentioned, Molotov cocktails and anything they could find at the officers. To be able to identify those who were committing felonies, oftentimes they are cowardly, they throw it over the crowd at officers. So to be able to identify them for spontaneous parties where we're not set up beforehand for the purpose of doing that is very problematic. To try and arrest some of the people who are standing around there and videoing and doing whatever else they're doing, again, you're spending a lot of time on arrests. In order to do that effectively and safely, you have to have arrest teams, pre-designated transportation teams, and booking teams. And so when you're talking about something that is generated as a result of social media activity, and people come together relatively spontaneously, it's hard to be able to stay ahead of that. So the best we could do in some of these circumstances is to be able to protect our officers, protect community members who are in the area, and as safely as possible to move the crowd away from the area and disperse them for the evening. As you can see from my report, there was the second night, there was one incident after another, after another, and after another, some with shootings involved. And so the officers are in basically a survival mode, trying to be able to do what they can to do their job as well as they can. And anytime you take on arrestees, you're responsible for their welfare and safety as well. And so from a logistics standpoint, it sounds easy to be able to say, why weren't hundreds of arrests made? But logistically, there's a lot sacrificed when that happens, plus the time you will subsequently spend with those arrestees, processing them, getting them medical treatment or whatever their needs are. And that's time that those units are not freed up to go back in the field into their divisions around the city. So a very complex situation, kind of a nuanced situation as far as response strategy for that. But our folks out there did an admirable job going from one of these incidents to another. But as I mentioned, anytime we have one of these, it draws tremendous number of resources away from our core mission of protecting our communities across the city.
Yeah, and it sounds like a very significant strain on all resources, especially in an unplanned situation. And so the fact that arrests weren't made that night doesn't mean arrests won't be coming.
They absolutely will. We gather as much information as we possibly can, video information, social media, whatever we can avail ourselves to, as well as people that we will talk to who will help us out with identifying the people who are the most problematic out there. We have very good detectives working this case and taking it very seriously, because as we know, those that are involved in one are often involved in many, and some of the organizers as well. So we'll be trying to trace it back as best we can and holding those accountable for what they did those nights.
And moving forward, is the department taking additional steps to monitor the social media feeds of some of these folks who are potentially organizing them? And also potentially, I don't know if there's any cooperation with the social media companies to try to prevent these types of escalations from happening where there's illegal parties being advertised and property being used.
Yeah, without going into investigative techniques, we do have relationships with social media companies. We do routinely monitor public social media feeds in an effort to try and know what's going on in our area of responsibility, to deploy accordingly if we see situations that could result in incidents like this.
Thank you. And thank you for the update on the hate crimes in Rampart. And thank you for taking the violence against transgender women seriously. And hopefully this will come with further arrests being made for the two outstanding suspects. I did have a question about the pursuit that resulted in a collision. From the report, it sounded like the officers were responding to an ALPR hit. And this is the concern that I've kind of raised when we were talking about new technology or getting more technology and making sure. I think ALPRs can be a very valuable resource, but don't want that to result in more police pursuits. Can you speak any about that?
Yeah, the officers were involved in, what would be considered good, strong police work, trying to be able to hold somebody accountable for stealing someone else's property. I watched the video on this from the in-car video and the body-worn camera video, and a very unfortunate situation in that the officers were driving, quickly to catch up, but also responsibly. The individual who was involved in the traffic collision pulled out from an intersection where there was stop signs onto a busy street where it was unregulated by traffic controls. And basically 1 second wasn't there and the next was right in the middle of the street, and the officers collided with that individual, tragically resulting in their death.
I will want us to kind of continue to monitor this issue and potentially develop alternative strategies for what officers can and should do when there is an ALPR hit on a vehicle for a stolen vehicle. At least sometimes I think a pursuit is necessary, and other times there may be other alternatives. And so making sure we're using the full arsenal of resources the department has.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Calanche. Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Chief, for the update. First of all, condolences to all the folks who were involved in the Baldwin Park incident. And Chief, as you noted, crime is down in some areas, but obviously there's still a lot of activity.
Sure.
And so I got to do a ride along with Rampart 2 weeks ago, and that is definitely one of the challenging divisions, especially in some particular areas. So I'm looking forward to maybe sitting down and figuring out what else is needed in the Rampart area, not only for the department, but in terms of some of the alternative services that are out there. Because
Okay.
I think there could be opportunities, there are opportunities for some very targeted approaches to support some of the folks who need that support out there.
I look forward to that. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanchez Gordon.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I just have a couple of questions, Chief, and first of all, I want to start out by also expressing my condolences to the police officer, the family, the friends of everyone in Baldwin Park, that it was a tragic incident. Secondly, my next question is just to follow up on what Commissioner Gurgis Shields talked about, and that was on these spontaneous parties. I think she covered everything that I wanted to talk about, but I do have a couple of more questions. You mentioned the date of May 24th. Did all these, I think you mentioned 9 events, possibly 10 events. Did that all happen on May 24th?
I'd have to go back, Commissioner, and look at the dates of the incidents, but that's not unusual. Our folks are going from one of these calls to another all the time. They're rarely this big or this violent or damaging, but they're dealing with these types of warehouse parties where they happen either spontaneously or pre-planned on a regular basis, to the degree that there's a special unit designated to just go around and monitor and be able to get additional units there if they need to disperse those. And so it is an ongoing problem that we need to work more closely with the city attorney to look at potential for abatement or other strategies, because this is unsustainable to keep doing this way each week.
Well, I agree with that. It seems like the first one was supposedly a punk party, a rooftop punk party, and then we have gang activity, we have motorcycle activity, we have another gunfire at 33rd and Broadway. It just seems like there's a lot
There's an awful lot.
going on
Right.
in the city. But I think I really just want to focus. Is that on one day on that? And you're saying it might be a typical day?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say typical, but as it heats up in the summer months, this is often the norm. And so you'll have one party after another, and the ones that have bands certainly draw the biggest crowds, and that's kind of what we saw in this case. And the amount that they're promoted also affect the number of people who will show up. The spontaneous parties may not get as many as the pre-planned ones, and to the degree that we're able to monitor social media or other avenues to be able to learn ahead of time of these parties, we're very frequently able to stop them before they happen.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, just to follow up again on the commissioner's question. On the hate crime of the transgender woman on 6th Street, you indicated that the first incident occurred on April 8th, where the Rampart Police Division became aware of that victimization. And then there was a series of attacks on the same woman, leading now to a attempted shooting and robbery. What did the police do, or what have they done from April 8th, when they first found out about this type of victimization of that transgender woman to date?
Well, they've, as I mentioned, a lot has been done. A lot remains to be done as far as taking those 2 additional suspects into custody. I went through the number of incidents and what occurred in each. One suspect was identified and arrested on May 27th. And then there was a follow-up after that. There was another attack on the 31st. While we still have 2 outstanding suspects, detectives are working to try and apprehend them. They've obtained and released very clear surveillance images, at least one extremely clear one, that we hope that the community will be able to come forward with the identity of this suspect, and then we'll locate him and make an arrest on that individual and possibly the second one as well. We've attempted DNA and fingerprint collection coordination with specialized units. We brought in Gang and Narcotics Division as well in order to be able to bring some specialized expertise to the investigation. So we're optimistic that we'll be able to get these two individuals in custody, as well as set the tone very clearly that this type of behavior will not be tolerated, and we'll work very closely with the district attorney to ensure that the case is presented to them for prosecution that will hold them accountable, but also make it very clear to anyone else who is looking to do any activity like this that there will be severe punishment and consequences should they do that.
Has this victim, this transgender woman, has she been offered any type of support, any type of assistance?
She has. Yes, she has. And I can get you offline. I can get you more information on that.
Okay. Last question. You indicated that on the 77th Street Division, there's been 18 shooting victims, much higher than the prior month. What's happening? What's going on out there to bring up the numbers to such a high level in 1 month?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look to see specifically that division, what the drivers were. But oftentimes, as we get into the post-Memorial Day, into the hot days of the summer, we'll see an uptick. The young people are out of school. We see some conflicts within gangs and between gangs as to who's going to take over what territory, what conflicts exist, and there's more people on the streets because there's warmer weather. So that's part of the broad answer. I can get back to you on, and I may have some info coming in here. There are gang shootings. Basically, it's gang activity between gangs. So we're working that Gang and Narcotic Division and 77th Street detectives following up on that.
Yeah, I'm really concerned. That's a high number within 1 month. And if the summer months, the heat, kids out of school, all of that is contributing, then, I mean, that logic seems like it's going to be uncontrollable. So, I mean, I'd like to know what contributed really to, besides gang activity that we have all the time, to the significant increase in victims being shot in that community.
I'll get back to you with specifics. Oftentimes, we talk about gang activity, but when there's an incident, there's a payback, and it goes back and forth. And sadly, the numbers can add up pretty quickly with what starts out as one individual conflict turns into 8 additional shootings. But I'll get you more information on the specifics.
Thank you, Chief.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll move on to agenda item number 2. Before we do, I'd just like to make an announcement. Agenda item 4A, the verbal presentation relative to the Community Safety Partnership Bureau and its collaboration with the Healthy Room Project will be continued to a later date due to the availability of the presenter. So we'll move on to agenda item number 2, public comment. Madam Secretary, please announce the first speaker.
The first speaker is Andrew Gravener.
Let's start the shit. Okay, so starting off with the Chiefs report. The Chiefs report should be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes at every meeting, and if it exceeds 3 minutes, we should match the amount of time the chief takes, and everyone should be able to speak both in person and on the phone. So we had a lot of talk today. You know, it's kind of notable that every time, why don't you have a little bit more concern when the LAPD shoots and kills someone? I mean, you got all this stuff when a cop is shot and killed, but nothing when the cops repeatedly shoot and kill community members. And it seems like, and you got a lot of talk about the hardships of the LAPD, and not specifically related to that, just in general now. But you know, you got so much hassle and such, while the community is continuously being harassed and brutalized, and it's just, I don't know, but you're all suffering so much, I guess. So we have the consent agenda. We have we have something for a harbor cleanup? Why is the LAPD in charge of that? We have something related to body-worn cameras. Looks like something about using it for surveillance while you ignore the body cam footage of, while you look at the body cam footage of the cops shooting and killing people and being brutal and say, oh, well, it was in policy, even though you have evidence showing it's not in policy what the LAPD did when they shot someone, killed someone, all that stuff. We have something related to a community safety partnership where you're gonna do this whole thing where you're gonna try to make it sound like you're for the community and you're just gonna use it for more surveillance. Got a $17,000 car wash upgrade. We've got a $5,000 holiday party for the Newton Division. And we got another vacation for the chief, it looks like. I guess memorial, but no memorials for when the LAPD shoots and kills someone. So we have the annual summary related to complaints. So let's look at this. So generally speaking, it's pretty obvious that when the LAPD is a complaint's filed against them, clearly something the LAPD did something wrong. So let's look at this. You sustained last year just 4.7% of your complaints total. You sustained 0 bias policing complaints. You sustained 0 unwelcome sexual advance in a workplace complaints. You sustained, let's see, you just sustained nothing here basically. You sustained more than 3 seatbelt violations.
The next speaker, Margarita Maria Carranza.
Hold on, please don't run the clock yet. Let me get situated. Okay. Don't start the clock yet. You started the clock. Good morning. Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Chief McDonald, I wish to share my sincere condolences for officer shot and killed on Saturday night. I was watching the news and I couldn't go to bed until the tragic news, and it is devastating for me to accept the public's disrespect for each and every official of the law. And I'm sorry that this happened. Next, I need to bring up to you, I filed a police report against my attorneys. Thieves is what it is. My name is Margarita Carranza, and I was here a few months ago, brought this complaint to Chief Choi because Van Nuys Detective Ward, has not done any investigation against the criminal law specialist who has robbed me multi-million dollars. I'm assuming it's a $14 million city, LA, and property owner, $14 million lawsuit on a full disability status created by their property, my injury on their property. These attorneys have done nothing but lie and fabricated documents. I sued them in Chatsworth Court. A judge was brought in and dismissed the case from Los Angeles. I sued them for a second accident at the El Super. We were over here at Stanley Mosque. A judge came in that was related to one of the attorneys that I'm working with and dismissed the case. Now, I was told I had to bring concrete evidence. I have concrete evidence right here where these attorneys claim that they received $25,000 from the city and $25,000 from the property owner. I have $50,000 right here from the property owner where they failed to tell me or anyone that $25,000 was in their possession, where they cashed and deposited without my authorization. I have here a fraudulent alleged electronic signature that I signed a release. It's just fraudulent. Just because it says Carranza email is not my email. It's never been my email. And this is what these attorneys have been producing and produced to Detective Ward to get all of you guys inspected, be thrown out. I have my copy of my driver's license with my actual signature that I need you to compare. There is so much evidence. I'm sorry, please don't cut me. There is so much evidence that I'm giving you page 1 of everything that they've done. They have cross-complaint, the city cross-complaint.
Okay, ma'am. Chief, can we have someone
Yeah, we have somebody.
assist?
Yes.
Sergeant
Okay,
over
ma'am,
there.
we're going to have an officer assist you, and thank you for your information.
Thank you. I'm looking for some help. And Chief, I would like you to have this, please.
I got it.
Yeah,
This is for you, so that you don't forget.
we have a
Somebody
sergeant home
please
here in
do
the back.
something.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
The next speaker is Luis Cachuo.
Hello, good morning. I'm here to represent my brother Hugo Cachuo. My name is Luis Cachuo. Hugo was my oldest brother. A year ago, on May 30th, 2024, my brother was horrendously shot and killed by off-duty police officer on medical leave, Victor H. Corral, for the LA Police Department. They happened in Ontario, California. They had some type of little altercation in the street, got out of the car. They had some type of incident going on with them verbally, then turned physical. Then out of nowhere, Corral pulls out a weapon and shoots my brother 6 times. My brother tried to run away and get away. He was unarmed. He had no weapons whatsoever. And this has devastated our family very much. We've been hurting every day, grieving my mom, his kids, our family, everyone that loved him. So we just want, accountability, transparency. I look around here, it says to protect and to serve. You guys are working for the people, to protect the communities, to keep everyone safe, everyone's life. It's tragic to be ended, from you guys' to ours. We're all human beings. Just because you have a badge and work for a department doesn't make you no higher, no less than anyone else. So we just want everyone to know that this is very, very unfair to us to have to fight for justice, to look for, a way out, to serve for different types of resources, different things that we can do so we can stop this senseless killing. They're supposed to be here to protect and to serve us, to pretty much withhold every life, at an utmost respect. But I just feel like my brother didn't do nothing wrong. There's 2 human beings having an altercation. One has a police weapon on him. So we've heard, and we don't know why he had to murder our brother. He tried to run away, tried to get away from him. Corral was been off for work for over a year. He shouldn't be carrying a weapon, and he still had. And yet there's video evidence standing over my brother while he's down on the ground, shot, hurt, can't do nothing for himself, defenseless, and he still pulls the trigger 3 more times. 1 to his head, 2 to his chest, other areas of his body, so he executed him. We don't know what's wrong with him. He's been on the force for 29 years. He's a veteran. And he chooses to do this act to my brother. And now he's being defended. The Department of Justice is looking into this investigation. So we just want answers. We want transparency, and we want accountability. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker, Melissa Miramontes.
My name is Melissa Miramontes, and I am here on behalf of my family and my brother, Hugo Ernesto Cachuo, who was brutally and unjustly killed by one of your own. Off-duty LAPD officer Victor Corral on May 30th, 2024, just 1 year ago. Hugo was a son, a father of 2 teenage boys, a brother, a protector, an uncle, and a deeply loved human being. Today he was involved in what should have been a minor fender bender, with what appeared to be just a regular car, a regular John Doe. But instead of being treated with basic human decency, Ugo was physically fought and then shot multiple times, including a fatal shot to the head, by a man in plain clothes who never identified himself as law enforcement. How does a man in a fight who pulls a gun get to shoot and kill an unarmed person and walk away with no consequences? The shooter had no life-threatening injuries. He was seen standing, walking, and talking just fine. His ego might have been hurt, but Ugo was the one left dead. Ugo was the one walking away. He was the one left laying on the ground, and Ugo was trying to get out of the situation. And then he was executed. Ugo had a lot to lose: his life, his kids, his future. He never gambled with his life. He valued it, and others. This officer chose violence. He acted with rage, pride, and no accountability. He thought no one was watching, but we were. And now the world is. Let me be clear. This is not a trained de-escalation. This is not how law enforcement should act. This was murder. And only after pulling the trigger did Officer Corral pull the badge. He shoots people when he's off duty. Look at his past. 2 other officer-involved shootings when he shot a man back in 2002 when he was off duty leaving work. He has a history of violence and erratic policing. This time, he made his point. He can kill on or off duty. Now he's hiding behind the badge while our family is left to bury Ugo, raise his children without their father, and fight this dark, broken system that has failed too many of us for far too long. We have heard all the excuses, investigation this, investigation that. Why is Victor Corral still free? Why hasn't the LAPD taken action? Why has the officer continued to be gone unnoticed? No answers to what is going to happen to this officer. You shouldn't protect murderers with badges. You don't get to call this justice. The Department of Commission and the department and the commission must act now. We demand full transparency into this investigation. We demand charges to Victor Corral. Ugo was a father, and we will not be silenced.
Thank you.
Jonathan Foster.
1 second. Commissioner Suthers, is this case coming to us? Is this, or is it, do we know?
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Is this Owen? Hello, Jonathan Foster. I support the LAPD, but I got to highlight things that need to change. You know, there's the 210.46 duty of officers to report misconduct. So I'm going to glance through 12 topics. One is Jimmy Carter. He died. Wanted to give him a mention. He wrote his important correspondence in pencil. And it was because up until recently, though, pencil was not able to be detected by surveillance or spy technology. On 3C today for cams, where is your commission cams? How come you haven't put that on so you wear commission cams? Today on 4B, the complaints, and of course I've heard, and we've all heard from some extremely brilliant people, bias reports. There were hundreds of them, only one was sustained over many years. Closed session today, 5A, on the chief. You know, in New York City, there was a Steve Hyland. He was falsifying crime stats, so he got demoted to a desk job. Jim, you need to resign, doing the same thing. How about this one?
This will be an ongoing conversation. Conducting an audit of the use of force training. Most important, the training, ultimately the outcome. The training.
Either the training's wrong.
Training.
So, you're talking about the Baldwin Park officer. He was shot and he had no body armor, and the blame is on Eileen Decker. She's guilty of failing the police department. There was also one shot dead in New Mexico. The next topic, there was a female LA Sheriff's Department suicide. And I have mentioned having a sleep log and how much caffeine. You know, caffeine is responsible for more suicides than you realize. Bill Clinton, December of last year, he went to the emergency room for dehydration. And so this leads me to what I came to speak about continually. Yang Yang's parents did not do this with Yang Yang and these other 5 names. So that's not really actually at fault because most people don't think like this. Probably no one connected to people like Grisario Mack, Wilver Blanco, Takar Smith, Linda Sarah Moran, and Yang Yang. Okay, so I've talked about these things. The caffeine, the sugar, the proper sleep, the omega-3s, the raw vegetables, the multivitamins. A few I didn't mention is fermented food, taking a supplement of amino acids. And of course, all these people are just completely dehydrated. Now, one thing I haven't spoken about, though, is the prescription of medications, or were they on meth or crack? Now, I know but what I'm looking at is food sources, stimulated food sources with being dehydrated. And then it gets blamed on the police department for shooting these people. And I think
Thank you.
The next speaker is Audit Alley.
Can you guys hear me if I'm not that close? Good morning. I'm here for what I'm always here for, to keep bringing attention to the crimes against children, elderly, and humanity by the, they're called the Church of Scientology, but I don't consider what they're doing a church. We have a peaceful protest. Peaceful is the key word, because that's what I'm about. You have no worries, Commissioner. There's not going to be any violence from our side. We are here, we use our voice, we use our passion, but we do it with integrity and with peace. You've met numerous victims of Scientology. There's many more you've never met or heard from. And it's in their honor, and give them a voice. And also for all their ADA violations, so it's a little bit for me too, and all the ADA abuses that they do, because they consider me a degraded being just because I'm disabled. And but I have concerns, because ever since I announced the peaceful permit, all of a sudden I'm getting phone calls for pre-planning my funeral. Okay, within 2 hours. All of a sudden there's a man who claims to be Scientologist, and he's in and out of their properties, and he assaulted a protester, he menaced another, and he showed up where I was as well, didn't do or say anything, but the message was sent. And I know they want to, and they also are going after me with their PR, black PR, with their Freedom Magazine, which is how they, like, if you ever look into Paulette Cooper, you can see more of what they're capable of to silence their enemies. And I know it's to deter me, to scare all of us into not doing, having a protest, but I don't take intimidation too well. And I am continuing. We all are. People are coming in because we're standing up for the victims of Scientology until you guys go in there and rescue every victim and make sure they're okay. And Laura, she wants to sing to her dad. We're doing it on Father's Day. People are giving up their Father's Day. So Laura, who is not allowed to say hi to her dad, she's not allowed to hug her dad. They will not allow it. And we want her to be able to sing. She's a singer. And to be able to sing to her dad and to let him know she loves him, even though we know he's going to be, behind the walls or whatever. And I'm also going to have a list of the 200, at least 200 names of children who have survived Scientology, and many of them are not with us anymore because they didn't survive. There's suicides. They have the highest suicide rate among survivors of Scientology, and people don't realize what is going on, so I'm here for that. They also tried to get a permit to close the street down that same day to prevent ours, but thankfully we had ours, and the city said, no, we're entitled to our First Amendment. But I am asking you, Chief, because I only have 3 seconds left, can you please make sure we have the security we need? Because we want it peaceful and we don't trust them. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Jason Reedy.
Okay, so in an LA Times article, the headline from April 30th, 2008, it reads 320 complaints of racial profiling and not one had merit, LAPD says. A big fat zero, said Commissioner John Mack, who these chambers are named after. In my mind, there is no such thing as a perfect institution. I find it baffling that we have all these zeros. Now, Bird Brain Bill Bratton, of course, rejected the idea that some allegations were unproven by LAPD standards that might still be legitimate. He said, this is not a racist department. It is not a homophobic department. It is not a brutal department, he claimed. Does it have some officers who may be those things? Possibly, but we search very hard for them, and their numbers are very small. Now, this is the same line that McDonald will likely repeat verbatim today, the same tired script, one that might sound good in a Hollywood movie, but of course doesn't hold up in the real world. Now, fast forward to another LA Times article headline from December 2015. LAPD found no bias in all 1,356 complaints filed against its officers. In this 2024 annual summary of complaints report, 1,766 biased police complaints were made, and not a single one was sustained. Now, how many years running is that for the city that Brittle Bratton named ground zero for addressing racial bias? Now, I revisited the December 15, 2015 Police Commission meeting, and I want to highlight a point from our dear elder Hamid Khan's public comment that day. He referenced how the lack of sustained bias complaints was part of the landscape of this rotten institution. He was right then, and he's still right today. Now, in the same meeting, Steve Sobroff, the LAPD's go-to favorite racist grandpa, pushed the narrative that the full rollout of body cameras at that time would provide more evidence to help sustain these complaints. And fast forward 10 years, and here we are. Not a single bias complaint has been sustained. And the public still never sees any of that body cam footage, what you call the quote-unquote strongest accountability metric to the public. Now, we know through your body cams and other surveillance tools that you likely have more footage of us than parents do of their children. And with that, you could practically produce a documentary on many people sitting in the room right now. Now, let's ask, who's filing the majority of these bias policing complaints? Anyone care to guess? It's black people, right? When you look at every aspect of the LAPD's terror against our communities, who do you think bears the brunt of it? Black people. Now, speaking of complaints closed in 2024, let's not forget that the LAPD determined that when Senior Lead Officer Elizabeth Southern said that I was high on drugs and threatened to call DCFS on my family for saying, "Fuck you pigs," that wasn't considered to be discourteous. She went as far as taking a picture of me and my child, my then 15-month-old child, to file a report with DCFS. Now, this report listed 302 pigs, 3.4%, ended up with sustained complaints in 2024. But what you won't tell the public is that complaints were made against 3,882 of your pigs, the highest it's been in over a 4-year period. That's 33% of your workforce had a complaint filed against them. Of your sworn pigs who filed 272 complaints, only 18 were sustained. So does that mean that these pigs who were lying about their counterparts, does that mean that they...
Thank you. Thank you.
The next speaker, please.
Public comment period has ended. Thank you. Please step away from the podium. You are disrupting the meeting. You are disrupting the meeting. This is your first and only warning. Please step away from the podium. You are disrupting the meeting. Thank you.
Hamid Khan. Here.
Thank you for honoring me with the elder status, Jason. Just another little piece on that also is that how the language changed during Bratton's time. It was always racial profiling. And this was, when Mac was here, this is how they put a spin on that and changed that to biased policing, to keep it more sanitized. And I just want to thank you for your sentiment and just really a lot of condolences to the family, because this is the most murderous police department in the country. This is a rubber stamp body. Do not, just get caught up into this thing that they represent the people, that this is a people's body. It is not a people's body. We are the people's body. And thank you for holding their feet to the fire and stay with it. We are with you every Tuesday, and we are with you all the way, because we expose them, we disrupt them. It's not only that, what Jason was talking about, let me give you another example that how they go after our people and how they are so complicit in this pipeline of abductions and kidnappings that are happening by ICE and the federal government of our community members as well. The report that Jason was talking about also includes 47,528 field interview cards in 1 year. 365 days. What are field interview cards that people are stopped, our youngins are stopped, and all the information is taken in? What is that information that is taken in? It's their name, it's their address, it's their email address, it's their social media handles and all of that, and gang affiliations and tattoos. Now they're wearing a body camera as well, right? In the body cameras, they have, as per their own documents, 6 million gigabytes. I have no idea how much information that is of that information. What happens to that information? That is uploaded into COPLINK, to record management systems. That is connected to COPLINKs, to Linux, to the California Law Enforcement Telecommunication System, to the National Crime Information Center, and on and on and on, which ICE and the federal government and the FBI have direct access to. So it's not only that they're murdering our people, they are separating families, they are kidnapping people, they are abducting people. And this is the kind of fuckery that we see day in and day out, the most murderous. And this body, we come here not expecting them to do anything. We come here to expose them. We come here to disrupt them. We come here for us to build our power and build our knowledge and shut down this shit, because they are deeply complicit. It's not about invasion of privacy, or it's the intentionality to cause harm. If we thought that the origins of policing from slave patrol, if you were a non-white person, if you were an enslaved indigenous person, had ended, it has taken on technological shapes. It has taken on those.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Matos Kadane.
So to continue on this point about just the theater of oversight and how insidious it is, this police department is a racist, violent police department. For every empty gesture that y'all put forward presenting care, there are 100 documented instances of violence that takes place every day by your officers. And that's the truth we choose to uplift. And I think I just want to start today's comment off by a direct quote from former LAPD Police Chief Ed Davis, where he says, "I would much rather celebrate Gay Conversion Week, which I will gladly sponsor when the medical practitioners in this country find a way to convert gays to heterosexuals." And that was Ed Davis's response to being invited to the 1975 Pride Parade. And in the following week, he actually used LAPD to raid a gay community event, a fundraising event. And so I want to juxtapose that history against the very big Pride presentation you have when one walks in. And, you know, just to emphasize how insidious this performance is, how well orchestrated it is. Today, you're talking about an instance of violence against a trans community member. Trans community members are attacked every day in the city. They're a very vulnerable community. They call the police all the time. Police respond to these instances all the time. Why is McDonald bringing it up today? And even highlighting the hypocrisy in talking about feigning care for a trans community member when the LAPD didn't bat an eye when their officers killed Linda Becerra Moran, a trans woman who called the police, who was being trafficked, who asked for help. Officers showed up and they killed her. That's how this department treats trans identities, queer identities of all sorts. And, you know, in case there is this inclination to think about this as something that happened 50 years ago, a few months ago in March, recordings leaked where LAPD officers were being explicitly homophobic. That's this department by and large. But there are moments of honesty, and we saw that today from Commissioner Shields, your questions around social media surveillance. And I think there were some really interesting points that were brought up around monitoring social media feeds, suppressing social media content that might be criminal in some sense, and partnering with social media companies. And McDonald, you stepped in to say, oh, we can't share investigatory information. That's really just an effort to keep this department a secret police department. We have public records requests that we've been putting in trying to get information about this, and they've been hiding it time and time again. But if you go online, The Daily Mail in 2021 actually released a very gross video out of 77th Division. This is 77th Division, LAPD's video, highlighting how they work with Meta, Facebook, to freeze accounts. And it's a very racist video. I encourage you to check it out. But all these tactics you're talking about in relation to something that's accepted as criminal in this setting, you talk about it freely, but when we understand that being black and brown and protesting is criminal, we know that you use these tactics on us for everything else.
The next speaker is Quinn.
So Jason and Hamid talked about this a little bit, but you have a whole summary here on your agenda, a summary of complaints which your department has received. Let's be super clear. Your summary of complaints is a summary of how you've attempted to cover up your violence to the public. You have a complaint process so that it can appear like you do something to address when your piglets enact heinous violences against people. Jason mentioned this, but out of 1,766 instances of what you called quote-unquote biased policing, you've considered exactly 1,766 of those instances as unsubstantiated, and you dismissed the complaint. Let's be clear, too, that biased policing is racist policing. It's homophobic policing. It's transphobic policing. You don't want to even use the language of racial profiling, so you say biased instead. But biased policing is just the watered-down way that you dumb nuts say racist. Notably, for those of you who are up there and need math help, 1,766 out of 1,766 dismissed is 100% dismissed, which means that 0% of the complaints you deemed substantiated. Out of every single instance of direct and overt racism in policing, you dismissed every single complaint. It goes to show your whole complaint system is nothing more than a cleanser, cleansing your image, cleansing your hands of blood. And once again, you say that this oversight body did oversight when you did literally zero oversight. You let the people complain about sexual assault and racism, and then you subsequently dismiss them. And Rasha and Teresa, you better shut the fuck up. You have no right to talk about violence against trans folks when you are the body who killed Linda Becerra Moran because she was trans. Your erasure of her death, your blasé attitude, and your callousness about her life don't even begin to encapsulate the way her blood remains on your hands, no matter how many times you try to scrub it away with your condolences about another hate incident. You sit up there and you posture while you simultaneously greenlight the biased policing incidents that led to Linda's death and the death of countless trans women in the past and in the future. And Jim, you talked about surveillance footage of the hate incident against the trans woman, lest you not forget the footage of your own piglets' body cams showing the murder of a trans woman. It's on fucking camera. Not to mention an instance in which your AOPRs caught a stolen vehicle by killing the person who stole the vehicle. Your pigs can't drive well enough to not cause fatal car accidents. No wonder why you needed 17 grand to upgrade your car wash. You quite literally need to wash away the blood of the community members you kill from your cars. Your automatic license plate readers are automating your ability to track, hunt, and kill the community members and the people you deem disposable. And Jim, why the fuck do you talk about youths listening to bands and music the same way you call terrorist incidents? You equivocate gang activity with warm weather with your talking about how lads gathered to listen to music is the same thing as a violent disruption, but you brought the violence and the chaos. You sicked riot cops on young kids, and then you shot them with rubber bullets. Go fuck yourselves.
The next speaker is Grace.
Already mentioned, but this board is not a site of oversight. It is a stage for the performance of accountability while the machinery of violence marches on unimpeded. Item 3C asks for more time for the LAPD to continue building out a data architecture that criminalizes and categorizes our people under the guise of, quote, digital evidence management. This isn't about data management, it's about surveillance. The body-worn camera program was never about protecting communities. It was about managing public perception while building a surveillance apparatus that feeds footage into Axon-run databases, data controlled by the police for the police, including federal agencies. LAPD boasts of hoarding over 6 million gigabytes of surveillance data, yet their own complaint report shows that less than 4% of complaints are ever sustained. This isn't a contradiction, actually. It's the function of policing, to accumulate mass data for control and prosecution, because policing exists to uphold racial domination, not to correct itself. and may have been postponed, but the Healthy Room Project, this $20K donation to the Community Safety Partnership Bureau to fund room makeovers for youth handpicked by the police, it's not generosity, it's propaganda. It is an engineered photo op, not a solution. Police are not social workers, they're not therapists, and they're not caregivers, they're violence workers. The same CSP police that patrols black and brown neighborhoods with guns and surveillance is now being marketed as a benevolent force giving away IKEA furniture. Meanwhile, over 94% of CSP's budget goes to the police salaries and benefits. 94%. This is not investment in community. This is extraction disguised as care. What does it mean to give a child a new bed while your institution evicts their family, arrests their parents, or harasses them on their way home from school? In the annual complaint report, like everyone mentioned, another ritualized performance of due process where every year thousands of complaints are buried, nullified, or dismissed. LAPD claims to take oversight seriously, but in the same breath reports not a single biased policing complaint was sustained out of 1,766 filed. Not one. That's not a failure of evidence. It's a system functioning exactly as it was designed. To shield police and silence communities. These reports are not mechanisms of truth. They are tools of counterinsurgency meant to absorb public outrage and launder legitimacy. Policing in Los Angeles is clearly not a broken system. It is a meticulously engineered regime of control, calibrated to criminalize survival and disappear and murder our people. From body-worn cameras to daily patrols, its machinery works not to protect, but to repress, cloaked, organized violence in the language of safety. And what is especially shameful is that in your own fucking timeline, it starts off the queer LAPD timeline with a history of police violence against queer communities. And again, it stops in 2021. Do you guys know what tokenization is? Do you know what that is? Because fuck all your gay cops, fuck all your trans cops, fuck all your non-binary cops. The moment they put on the badge, they turned their back on the queer community. And Rasha, shame on you for saying LAPD protects trans communities when they murdered Linda Becerra-Moron in February. Shame.
The next speaker, Megan.
Hi, I just wanted to say I'm really sorry for your brother. I'm also sorry that you will never get anything from them. I've really lost track of how many families have come here pleading for justice and they don't do shit. The whole purpose of policing is to control us with force and fear. So for them, your brother's murder is the cost of doing business. We, the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, organizes to end them all together, to end policing because it's inherently racist and violent. And I invite you to join us because there's no justice here. I want to thank the people that put together the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition's bullet points every week. It's really how we know what LAPD is up to. I want to talk specifically about the donation today to the Healthy Room Project because it highlights the connection between billionaires and police. So the Healthy Room Project, it's run by Janet Crown. She's a billionaire. Her family's worth $12 billion. She admits that the goal of this program is to change the narrative between policing and community. Which community is she referring to? It's not Beverly Hills, it's not Encino, it's not Santa Monica. Of course not. The communities she's hoping to change the narrative of policing are black and brown poor people from South LA, where LAPD murders and bombs and surveils them 365 days a year. She hopes to change that narrative, by the way, by having cops give away some cheap furniture one day a year. So policing in this country began when wealthy white people who forcibly enslaved Africans hired poor white people to form a gang and return those enslaved people to them when they ran for freedom. And when they were no longer legally allowed to own people directly, those slave-catching gangs started surveying and criminalizing black people so they could be put in jail and thus legally enslaved again for their labor. That's the history of policing in this country. That's what it still is. This lady, Janet Crown, her wealth was built and is maintained on the exploitation of poor people, who she now seeks to pacify with cheap furniture. She donates to police because you protect her interests, you protect her property, you put down protests which seek to change conditions for poor people, including union busting, and you selectively enforce the law so you can re-enslave black people via prison labor and generate more wealth for her. You all run cover for that. You sanitize it and professionalize it and fund it. This is gang activity. I don't want to hear you fucking talk about gang activity because this is gang activity. Fuck you guys. Sorry for your brother. Please join us.
The next speaker, Henry.
My name is Henry Marini, and I'm going to tell you the story, a real story that actually happened to me on exactly how I found out that Ishmael Peinado, the detective over at Northeast Division, is in fact the Scientology mole that's actively, selectively, and maliciously prosecuting anybody that speaks out about the kiddie trafficking and kiddie SA cult known as Scientology. It's really a kiddie RAPE cult, and it's international. And really what LAPD is doing is aiding and abetting the prosecution of any activist. So I'm gonna take a step back. June 16th, 2024, I had about half a dozen people over at the Catalina Street intersecting Fountain Avenue and West Sunset Boulevard. Scientology had illegally blockaded the public right-of-way all across Catalina, as well as Fountain and L. Ron Hubbard Way. The city actually issued a notice that it was illegal for Scientology to blockade the public right-of-way. That, in fact, June the 2nd, 2024, one of your very own officers, Michael Ventura, actually informed high-level officials at Scientology that they cannot put all of these blockades to the public right-of-way. It is illegal, and that the activists there are peacefully exercising their First Amendment right. Of all the people that were there that were removing each of those barriers, only I was selectively prosecuted and issued a 1-count misdemeanor charge of vandalism for simply removing the nets and putting them over on the side so that people wouldn't get hurt, so that the public right-of-way wouldn't be blockaded. And I, and only I, was prosecuted. And I'm going to tell you the story of why that is. So the city attorney, Heidi Feldstein Soto, in fact, runs the biggest gang in LA. It's not the LASD, and it's not the LAPD by far. It is Heidi Feldstein Soto. And what you need to know about Heidi is that she actually worked, get this, for the Arthur Anderson accounting firm, which was the same accounting firm used by the Enron Corporation to commit wide-scale fraud. She's a banking lawyer who's been permanently banned on planet Earth from every Citibank location.
Seems to be off topic to what the
Do
Board
not
of Police-
interrupt me, and I want to cure and
Not
correct
tell
for my
me to
time.
not interrupt you.
So I'm going to go ahead and explain again how that's linked to LAPD Ishmael Peinado. Okay, that's serial number 40873. That's who Ishmael Peinado is, colluding actively, and on his own damn report, committed perjury and admitted there was no evidence of the ownership of the netting, there was no evidence of damages, and you were talking about quick prosecution, Jim. Well, you know how fast this case was actually filed? Under 2 weeks, Jim. So you're telling me that the LAPD can go and prosecute activists in 2 weeks having zero evidence, but when stuff that's literally in front of you on video, you guys won't prosecute it? Absolutely disgusting. I'm going to sue you guys, and I know I have the written report for the OIG guys soon, so I emailed you earlier. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Mirka Sanchez.
Good morning. My name is Mirka Sanchez. I am the sister of Mario Sanchez Torres. He was killed by the LAPD Southeast Division on March 14, 2025. He was unarmed. He was murdered. He was pulled over, and my brother was a family man. He was a son, a father. I loved him so much, and I miss him, and our life has changed so much. I don't understand why did they did that to him. They shot him about 40 times, those 4 officers. So we just want accountability from the officers who did that to him, and I want the commissioners to hold him accountable for what they did, and we want answers, and we're not going to stop fighting for justice for my brother. He is missed, and our lives have changed so much. So please, if you guys could help us, we appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is the last in-person card, Mr. President. And I'm having issues with the Zoom, so we do not take any Zoom today.
Okay. Thank you. We'll now move on to agenda item number 3, which is the consent agenda items. We have items 3A through H today, and I will take any comments, questions to pull items from my fellow commissioners. Any? Okay. Commissioners? Okay. Hearing none, then I move that we adopt for recommendation for board action items 3A through H. Is there a second?
A second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to agenda item number 4, the regular agenda items. As I mentioned, item 4A is going to be continued to a later date. We will now move to item 4B, which is the department's report relative to the 2024 annual summary of complaints. Okay, they're coming in. Okay. You sure? Okay. Go ahead. We're good. Okay. So, officers, my apologies. What we're going to do is we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we'll call you back at 11:11. Okay, my apologies for that. Okay, thank you. Commission will recess for 10 minutes. Thank you. The commission meeting will resume. We will now have agenda item number 4B, which is the department's report relative to the 2024 annual summary of complaints as set forth. Chief Ramkunis, thank you for being here this morning. If you'll introduce everyone, the floor is yours.
Yes, sir. So good morning, Commission President Southers, Vice President Shields, Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon, Calanche, Inspector General Barragan, Chief, Django, and Garcia. Good morning. So with me today, I have Assistant Officer in Charge of Professional Standards Bureau, Commander Herman Hurtado. I have the Commanding Officer of Internal Affairs Division, Captain Dave Wang. I have Detective Mike Hackman, who is our oversight, analysis, and review. He works directly for me at Professional Standards Bureau, who compiles all of the data and generates the reports. I have the Department Advocate, Lieutenant Javier Sanchez, sitting behind me. Lieutenant Rich Estevez is my adjutant. And then Sergeant Jerry Contreras handles all of the bias policing, our mediations, and alternative complaint resolutions within the organization.
Thank you.
So it is a pleasure to be here to present the 2024 summary of complaints today. Commander Hurtado and I are proud of the leadership team within PSB who have worked extremely hard to keep a high level of accountability for each of the members of this organization. Before I turn it over to Detective Hackman, I just want to preview a couple of the largest successes that were born out of last year's statistics. First, the department resolved a record number of community concerns with procedural justice processes. While you will hear more about these from the department coordinator for alternative complaint resolution and mediation, these terrific results also reflect the hard work of field supervisors across the city to make the extra effort to connect with the community, and that collective effort deserves recognition. Secondly, Internal Affairs Division substantially increased training efforts to make supervisors more efficient at resolving complaints, providing faster closure to the involved employee and the concerned community member. The training also focused on emphasizing a training-led approach to correcting employee behavior. And lastly, before we discuss the results of this last year, I want to briefly mention where we are going. Under the leadership of Chief McDonald, we have been challenged to reimagine the discipline process to make it more fair for officers and to reduce the administrative burden on supervisors while maintaining the highest standards for accountability to the public. Although the final specifics of that effort are not ready to be shared at this time, we have a broad consensus on ways to improve. I want to thank Chief McDonald for his leadership and support in addressing this issue with our labor partners. I'll turn it now to Detective Hackman.
So as the chief mentioned, this is just going to be an overview of the complaints that were closed and or initiated in 2024. So when we think of the complaint system, it's really we start to think about how they originate. And so on this department, we initiate complaints in two different ways. One is when a member of the public alleges misconduct or expresses their concern, and the second is when the department itself identifies potential misconduct by an employee. When we deal with the public complaints, we accept them in virtually every available avenue. So these are in person or phone, in writing by email, fax, online complaint submissions, postal mail station, drop-offs. And then we also receive them on referral from the Inspector General's office as well as all of the commissioners. So when we look at the number of
Or we're going to manually have to do it. We can.
When we look at the number of complaints in 2024,
we see that we initiated 4,430, which is a four-year high and about 10% higher than we saw in 2021. Breaking those numbers down further, we had 4,247 complaints that had a public origination. 275 complaints had a department origination. 348 were by a department employee, and 102 were unknown status, which is typically our anonymous complainants, where we can't assign if it was internal or external. Do note that a single complaint may have multiple sources, so the numbers on the right will not add up to the 4,430 on the left. So when we look at the trends and the analysis of that, there's two striking components, public and department. So for the public complaints, it's increased substantially since 2021. It's about 50% higher. And this is actually returning to higher volumes that we saw pre-pandemic and pre-civil unrest. And internally, we see this as an early indicator of increased public trust of the department, especially to police itself. This is supported by some IACP research that generally suggests that the complaint process is both an indicator of public trust and a builder of public trust. And then it also reflects some trends we've seen in numbers previously during nationwide incidents of public lowering of trust. And then on the department numbers, we're approximately 50% lower than 2021. And this is kind of reflective of the progressive discipline reforms and a training-led approach to correcting behavior. So supervisors and commands are feeling empowered to address it early and with lesser interventions before the issue escalates. So when we look at the disciplinary misconduct findings, it kind of gives you a perspective of just how pervasive it is against the department and its employees. So last year ended with 11,641 total department employees. There were 3,882 that were accused in a complaint. And of that, only 327 employees came out of the year with a sustained complaint finding against them. So that's about 2.8% of the total department's employees with a sustained finding. And then again on the right, there's a further breakdown of that 327, 302 were sworn and 25 were our civilian professional staff. So now we're getting into the complaint allegations that we closed. And before I get into the allegations, I just think it's important to remind you that the complaint itself is kind of a folder and has many sub-allegations within it. So the allegation numbers we have are substantially greater than the number of complaints that we received. Particularly on our department.
Detective, can you hold for a moment? I believe Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon has a question.
Detective, I just have a minor question before you proceed. On the complaints initiated in 2024 under public, and then you have department and department employee. What's the difference between department and department employee? Because you gave us a big number for department employee, but what's department?
That is a great question, Commissioner. Thank you. So department is when the department itself is the one making the allegations. So this is, we don't believe that they carried out their duty properly. They neglected to do a thorough investigation. It's something that we ourselves discovered. Department employee is when the department employee is individually the aggrieved person. So they have a complaint with another member of the department.
Is it sworn versus staff?
So department employee could be sworn versus sworn, civilian versus sworn, sworn versus civilian. It's just any combination of it, but it's an individual on the department that's aggrieved as opposed to the department as a whole for not having the policy procedure followed.
Does a department, just a quick follow-up, does a department initiated complaint go through the same exact process?
It does, ma'am, exactly the same process.
Okay.
So turning back to the complaint allegations, since we predominantly have patrol working two-person unit, our allegations are larger than normal just based on the fact that we frame against both officers. And so these are all kind of things that explain why we have such large allegation numbers as opposed to complaints. But just going down that breakdown, our largest category was neglected duty, and the two largest within this are failing to do a thorough investigation and failing to take a report. We have unbecoming conduct, which is fairly wide-ranging, but it's anything an officer does that would tend to discredit the department or oneself. Discourtesy is our third largest category. Bias policing, of course, is the fourth largest category. And then we have detention violation, unauthorized force, and search violations as well. And to the right, you can see the relative rates of sustaining. So, of course, neglected duty did have the largest number of sustained complaints, followed by the unbecoming conduct and discourtesies. We did find that there was detention violations, unauthorized force, and search violations to the tune of 6, 11, and 11. And then there's an asterisk for bias policing because we'll discuss that more in detail on a subsequent slide.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
May I ask a question? When you talk about biased policing, we heard this morning from several people that that is another word for racial profiling. Could you talk a little bit about that? And is that disguised as racial profiling?
Great question, Commissioner. So bias policing is more encompassing than racial profiling.
Say that again?
Bias policing is actually more encompassing than racial profiling. Racial profiling is included in that, but it also extends to any police activity that could be done based on someone's gender, based on their sexual orientation, based on their homelessness status, based on their English language proficiency. So we prohibit taking law enforcement action on all of those categories, not just on race, and so we use a larger umbrella term for it.
But it does include racial profiling.
It does.
Thank you.
So for the adjudications in the 2024 closed complaints, it has the breakdown above. There's three that I kind of want to talk about specifically. Those are the mediated, the ACR, which is the alternative complaint resolution, and demonstrably false. So ACR numbers, we are up 5.5 times since 2021, and mediation is up about 2.5 times from both 2023 and 2022. And we're really proud of these efforts because this is us rebuilding with the community. They bring a concern to us, we sit down with them, we go over what we did, they express how our actions made them feel, how we gave them a perception, and then especially in the case of mediation, 90% of the time, both the community and the officer walk away satisfied. So this is truly the rebuilding of the trust that our complaint system is designed to help facilitate. And then the demonstrably false allegations, we have 3,000, which is up rather substantially since 2021, about 3x. And this is a more immediate closure for both the officer and the community member. This is us being able to use technology to watch the body-worn video and say that what's being alleged did not occur, and to provide that immediate closure for both people and move on. It also is a judicious use of our investigative resources when we can identify that there's video disproving it and move to the next one that requires more of an investigation.
So, hang on one second. So, Detective, what I'd like to do is, before you go on to the next slide, we'll take Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon's question, and then let's take questions from the commission to the presentation to this point, and then we'll do the second half. There's a lot of material here. We'll do the second half of the presentation, and we'll take those questions as well. So, Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon, the floor is yours.
Thank you. On the demonstrative, under the adjudication in 2024 closed complaints, and specifically under demonstrably false, which is 3,045, does that include department and department employee, or is it just the public? Because that's a big number.
That's a great question. It can include both of those categories. I will note that usually if the department is framing the allegation itself, we already have a suspicion that the misconduct occurred. There's already some evidence there, or else the department wouldn't frame it itself. So those are less common. So most of them are public, but you could have that, especially with department employee complaints.
Okay.
You know, Commissioner, if I can just add to that, unusually with these complaints, there's multiple allegations within one complaint. You can have 1 to 100. And there'll be, each allegation will get its own adjudication. So you can have allegations within a single complaint that could be demonstrably false based on video review, evidence, et cetera, where other allegations would be adjudicated differently. So that's why there's a little bit of a difference, but that comes from the public. As Mike mentioned, Detective Hackman, usually department allegations are not going to be demonstrably false because the department is alleging against that employee. So that wouldn't be false if we were alleging the department were, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
So what I'd like to do is I'd like to go to each commissioner. I'll ask my questions last, and I'll give the floor to Vice President Shields for all the content you've presented to this point. Vice President Shields.
No pressure there. That's, let me see, kind of midstream. I will say I appreciate this and I appreciate the report, and we might get into more details after the next round of questions. I will say that I think an important thing to note with this department in addition to all of the different modes of complaints that are provided, it also allows for the anonymous reporting of complaints, meaning whether it's a member of the public or a member within the department who wanted to lodge a complaint that is purely anonymous, that is something that the department accepts. And that makes it different than a lot of other police departments. And so that does potentially increase the number of complaints that are taken and having put on your plate to investigate. I will quibble with you potentially about whether the rise of the number of complaints shows that there's more trust in the public, in the Department of Policing itself. I think that speaks more towards the results of their complaints as opposed to the number of complaints. So I don't know if I fully believe that statement that was made, or I think we may agree to disagree potentially as to that. And I think we will get to the asterisks of the biased policing thing. And I will, the conduct unbecoming and discourtesy, those are fairly large categories. And I think there's a swath of different types of conduct that is captured in those types of situations. But, and I think maybe I'll save my specific comments towards closer to the end, because I do want to get a little bit more understanding of how some of the actual allegations that are made, particularly by the public, how that's addressed. But I don't think I have a specific question for you all right now.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, same. Oh, wait. Thank you.
Commissioner Calanche?
Thank you. I just have more process questions and maybe definition questions. So on the demonstrably false on adjudications, how many people review the information or the body worn? Is it just one person, or is there multiple people that review the information?
Great question. So under our current process, it's the intake supervisor, then their watch commander, the employee's commanding officer who actually recommends the adjudication officially. It goes up to that employee's bureau commanding officer for concurrence, and then it's sent to us at PSB for our review and evaluation section to look at again. So it is verified that what was represented on the video is occurring.
Okay, so there's no chance that at a division level, somebody would just say it's demonstrably false, and then it just ends there?
No, ma'am, we're very confident in our demonstrably false adjudications.
And also depending on the type of allegation, if it's a bias policing type of allegation, then it goes through our R&E, it goes through my adjutant and myself also before. So sometimes there's 7 levels of review on a demonstrably false complaint.
Okay, perfect. So that's helpful. And then on the mediated and ACR, is that directly involved the city attorney's office, or do we have mediators, or who's adjudicating those? Okay, I can wait. That's fine. Since it's coming up, yeah. And let me see, just double check. I can stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon?
I'm fine.
You're
Thank you.
good? So if we could go back to the beginning, just some context here, and I'd hate to put you on the spot, Chief, but this is a 4-year high. Do you happen to know what the number of complaints initiated was in 2020? Or 2019? I'm just trying to get some perspective here. Is this a 4-year high as in 10 years, or was in 2020 we close to where we are now?
Commissioner, I don't have the exact numbers. Okay. 2020 was very similar to 2023's numbers from my recollection.
Okay.
Which was a slight increase from 2019. But that itself was a decrease. Our historic highs happened in the late 2000s, early 2010s, when we were getting 7,000 to 8,000 complaints a year. So we're still appreciably below our department's all-time high, but it is a short-term high.
Thank you. If we could go to your slide that's titled Complaint Allegations Closed in 2024, what's the threshold to sustain a bias policing complaint in a nutshell?
So in a nutshell, it's preponderance of the evidence that a protected class was relied upon in whole or in part in taking part of a law enforcement activity. So there was a detention, there was a search, there was an arrest, there was a citation. Any law enforcement activity was done in whole or in part, and it's just the preponderance standard.
And the last one is just a clarification, a little acronym challenge. I'm usually not, but on this one I am. What is IETA?
Great question. It means insufficient evidence to adjudicate, which is usually when the investigation just didn't produce enough for us to either make a conclusion or not, or even have all the evidence we know existed.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Are there any other questions to this point, or I'll let him continue? I'll let them continue.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. Carry on.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So actually, speaking of the alternative complaint resolution mediation process, we have the two programs as mentioned. The first is the alternative complaint resolution, which is designed as a procedural justice process to rebuild trust with the community. This is unique in that it's facilitated by a department supervisor, and it usually occurs almost immediately to the complaint. So this is someone expressing a concern about the reason why they were stopped. A supervisor being able to roll out to the scene, show them the digital in-car video and saying, well, here you are in video rolling the stop sign. This is why the officer stopped you. Do you understand? And, and then them understanding. Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry. I thought you had a question. We also have the mediation program, which is similarly designed as a procedural justice process. But this is facilitated by the city attorney's office in their community police unification program, and they use professional volunteer mediators. The other difference here is that this is usually a scheduled and planned occurrence. Because it is involving outside entities, we have to coordinate schedules with the officers, the complainant, and then our mediators. Next slide. So now we're getting into the bias policing. And so for our bias policing allegations closed in 2024, 39% of them were resolved as demonstrably false, 47% were resolved as unfounded, 2% had insufficient evidence to adjudicate, and then a combined 10%, or 1 in 10, were resolved through these procedural justice processes. There's a note at the bottom that there was an employee who completed their Board of Rights and was found guilty of engaging in bias policing. That occurred at the very end of 2024, and so it didn't get administratively closed in the year, and it also will be reflected officially in the reports for 2025. And then on the right is the note on what bias policing is, which is the taking law enforcement action based in whole or in part on a protected class. And for our department, demonstrations of bias not involving law enforcement action are also prohibited, but they're not classified as bias policing. In fact, they're actually classified as demonstrations of bias, usually discourtesy, discourtesy or an improper remark based on a race, gender, ethnic basis. And so for those, we closed 4 complaints that were sustained. One was race-based remarks to coworkers by a sworn employee, which resulted in a recommendation for termination, but he resigned before his appellate process. We had a gender-based remark in the office by a sworn employee, which resulted in a 22-day suspension. We had a gender-based remark to a coworker by a civilian employee, which resulted in termination. And then we had another civilian employee make a race-based remark to an outside law enforcement agency, which resulted in a 22-day suspension. So the penalties are all very high, which does reflect the department's stance that we take it very seriously. And then we had 3 actions could have been different on these, which were largely perception-based concerns. So we didn't have enough evidence to substantiate that there was truly bias, but it did not reflect the standard of the organization, and so they had less than punitive discipline imposed. And those are on the right. So for the penalties for sustained complaints, it shows the breakdown of the penalties that were imposed. So there were 101 suspension officers who received suspension days. There were 14 employees who were terminated. 63 officers received an admonishment. 2 found their complaint sustained, but no punitive penalty was imposed. And 106 received an official reprimand. And then on the right, it does discuss that we had 15,038 allegations that were closed. 701 of those were sustained, which is an overall 4.7% sustained rate. Then at the back end of it, employees do have appellate rights. So if the department finds them, we sustain an allegation against them, they can appeal it. The first is a directed Board of Rights, which occurs when the chief of police determines that the recommended penalty should be removal from the department. They're directed before the 3-member panel. The other is an opted Board of Rights, which is when the sworn employee receives either at least one suspension day or demotion, and they opt to have an appeal held before this board. We had 30 directed Board of Rights that occurred during 2024. In 15 of those, the chief's recommendation for termination was maintained and the employee was separated. 2 of them were not guilty, and then the remaining 13 had lesser suspension days imposed upon them, and the breakdown is to the right. We also had 17 opted Board of Rights. 9 of those changed from a suspension day to either not guilty or out of statute. 4 were reduced to an official reprimand. 2 resulted in fewer suspension days. 1 changed from a demotion to just a suspension, and 1 resulted in a higher penalty. Right. And then now if you have any other questions, we'd be happy to take them.
So what I'd like to do before we open it to questions, I'd like to ask one of you to take the time to explain what the Board of Rights is, who sits on it, how you are selected for it, and what they adjudicate during their session. Thank you, Lieutenant.
Good morning. So a Board of Rights process, it could be either a directed board with, a Board of Rights process is either, there's 2 types. A directed board where the chief of police determines that this employee can no longer perform the essential duties of a police officer and wants this employee removed from the department. The second option is an opted board where this employee is given anywhere from 1 to 22 suspension days and they want to appeal the penalty in front of a panel. The panel can consist of two different boards. A traditional board is 2 command staff officers and 1 civilian hearing examiner who's selected by the Board of Police Commissioners. And the other option is an all-civilian board, which since 2020, it's 100% of the time we have all-civilian boards. So we have approximately 64 hearing examiners that are part of the pool. Once an officer is either directed to a board or opts for a Board of Rights, the associate advocate putting on the case will call the Board of Police Commissioners and get 9 names. Out of those 9 names, there'll be a striking process. The department will strike first, the defense will strike next, and then we'll go down the road. The 3 remaining hearing examiners will sit on that Board of Rights. So, and after that, there will be a conference call to schedule the board. We got to make sure that everybody's available for the board. The board dates will be selected, and then the board will proceed.
Who is eligible to apply to be a hearing examiner?
So it could be any community member in good standing. They are typically, we have a lot of attorneys. We have professionals from that are real estate agents, academics. We have people in the community that are clergy members. So it's pretty diverse pool of hearing examiners that are sitting on these boards of rights.
Thank you.
Commissioner, if I can just add to that a little bit. So as Lieutenant Sanchez mentioned, in 2019, Measure C, so the all-civilian boards came into be, at the end of in June of 2019, and we're currently within that process where you have the 2 different avenues where you can have all-civilian board, and then you can have the old traditional board with 2 sworn command staff and 1 civilian. That process is under a motion right now within City Council to redo charter, to go back through and work with the new chief and work with the Board of Police Commissioners and the Inspector General's office to look at the process. There was a motion made to look at the overall Board of Rights process that involves change of city charter that we are currently working on today to try to see if we can maybe create a better avenue, better product as a result of the Board of Rights, the employees appellate process.
Okay, thank you. And I'll open the floor for questions. Anyone? Commissioner Calanche.
Okay, to stay on that theme of Board of Rights, if you can, with a little bit more detail, let's see. So you have, if you look at the first directed Board of Rights results. So that means that I'm just want more detail. That means that the chief of police made a decision and sent this officer to Board of Rights.
That is
with a determination, right? And then according to your table, 50% of the time the Board of Rights kept the chief's determination.
So that is correct. So there was 30 times during 2024 30 cases, complaints, in which the chief recommended that that employee or employees be removed from the organization. Per city charter, the chief can only recommend termination as the way it stands today. And in 30 cases, the chief thought that the actions of that employee or employees was that significant to where they should be removed from the organization.
And it would only go to Board of Rights if the chief is determining termination.
Correct. There's also an opted board. If we stay with directed board where the chief recommends a Board of Rights, yes, it would be a termination. The chief would have to recommend someone to a Board of Rights for termination.
Termination.
Yes.
What happens if the officer decides to resign?
We would still proceed and close the case because there is state law that mandates us to close cases. So employees, hence Senate Bill 2 that came in 2021, to prevent employees from leaving an organization to join another police agency pending a significant case. That case would be closed through the department, unable to impose, as I think one of the slides mentioned. We had a few of those that occurred, but the case would still move forward and close as unable to impose termination based on the employee retiring.
Okay. And then of the other 15 that Board of Rights made an alternative recommendation, these are the results?
Correct.
So for instance, the chief recommended termination, but 2 of those 30 basically kept their job with no penalty.
So 15 kept their job with multiple days, right, 2
Yeah,
for
but
not
2
guilty.
with
yes.
like 0
Yes,
penalty. So they
correct.
were recommended for termination, but got like 0 days off, 0 suspension. Okay,
Were found not guilty at the board and sent back to work.
okay. And then the rest are outlined here. Okay, okay. So that's helpful. And then on the opted Board of Rights, can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So an opted Board of Rights is when the department determines that the allegations are sustained, and based on the penalty, there's a suspension days given. And the chief could impose anywhere from 1 to 22 days. And once the penalty is imposed on those officers, they have a right to appeal the suspension days, and that's when they will opt for a Board of Rights for a independent, set of examiners to listen to the evidence and determine whether it would be sustained or not. So, as you can see by the graph, in the 17 cases that were opted for a Board of Rights, the penalty was lowered in 16 of them except for 1.
And Commissioner, and just to be clear with that, that is the employee's right per,
So every employee, so just, I think I understand this, but just for clarity for everyone. So when, say, for instance, a case comes to us for, say, officer-involved shooting, and we make a recommendation in policy, out of policy, the chief has the ability to provide determination of punishment. I hate to use the word punish. Penalty. So then the officer then has the right to challenge that penalty in the Board of Rights. So they opt to, instead of taking the chief's recommendation for, say, suspension or whatever, they can opt for a Board of Rights. And according to this table, and many times the Board of Rights then will, or have, the history is that they will be more lenient than what the chief recommends.
correct, based on our numbers. And just to be clear, on a out of policy type of shooting, if the chief recommended a complaint to be initiated out of the findings from the Board of Police Commissioners, that complaint would then be adjudicated with a penalty. The chief has an option to do training, notice to correct, or
Right.
a complaint. And so if the complaint avenue was chosen, then yes, it would be handled on the complaint side. There's also appeals on tactics, on findings, that is a different avenue
But
than
not Board of
complaints.
Rights.
No, it still would fall under, it would be an admin appeal per se. And so that goes before a hearing examiner to hear the evidence. But that's a different topic. out of
Not the
different place.
3-member Board of Rights process.
Correct.
Okay, last question, because I know others have questions. So on this topic, is there other complaints that the chief might have against an employee that maybe that could be challenged by an officer at the Board of Rights, aside from like the ones that we adjudicate?
Sure. So every employee that receives some form of discipline has the option to appeal that finding or decision, whether it's a termination case where the chief directs to a board or the employee gets a one-day penalty. If an employee gets a one-day penalty or a two-day penalty for losing their gun, the employee then can go and opt for a Board of Rights for the hearing examiners to hear the case, to try to present new evidence or something like that.
And are those listed here? Because it seems like a little bit of,
Or not the breakdowns, not completely with what each 17.
those are considered like admin or?
So Commissioner, great question. So of the 17 that were opted, only 4 of them stemmed from shooting violations, which the commission made an opinion on. The other 13 were regular administrative misconduct, where the department itself was the only adjudicator involved.
Okay, so only 17 have been challenged in a Board of Rights.
17 last year, correct. Officers also have, as the chief mentioned, the admin appeal option,
for other things.
which is where they're just challenging the severity of the penalty, but they admit to guilt. In an opted board, they're challenging both the guilt and the penalty.
Got it. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
So before I go to Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon, what would be helpful, and I believe I've seen it before, would be a flow chart that shows from action to Board of Police Commissioners adjudication to chief to these processes and what options or what actions the officer can take along that route before we get to a determination. That'd be very useful for just an overall look at the process, if anyone has that or could put that together at some point, perhaps for the next time we do this. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon.
Yes, and I would second that because what I want to focus on right now, my primary question, goes to this penalty imposed. We have 30 cases, I believe, that were perhaps adjudicated by the commission. 15 of those, according to this chart, the chief of police recommended termination. Is that correct? Am I on the right path?
No, so this is complaints. The police commission doesn't adjudicate any complaints. Within that could be out of policy use of force findings that would be turned into a complaint
Okay.
that would be adjudicated
All right.
by the chief.
Thank
The
you for-
chief is the only one that can implement any discipline within the organization.
Thank you for that clarification. So it seems of the 30, I think I'm going to go with the flow chart, okay? I'm going to wait till this flow chart because this is really, I think, important for me to see why it's important for me to understand whether the 30 that we're talking about under the directed Board of Rights results, were they 30 that the police chief recommended as termination, but only 15 of those were that was the penalty imposed, and then the other 15, 2 were not found guilty, 2 got 2 days, one other got 6 days, and if that is the situation, I would like to know why. What are the factors that are so were considered and are so different or evaluated in such a way that instead of termination like the chief wants, because he knows what's going on, he knows the underlying allegations, the complaint, only 50% of those get terminated and the others get maybe not guilty. I mean, that's day and night. What are the factors? What was considered by the Board of Rights, especially the 2 sworn officers and the civilian, that resulted in that conclusion? That's really what I want to know.
So we can get you the specifics, but just for clarification, all 30 of these Board of Rights were heard by all civilian hearing examiners. So all 3 panel members were civilian members that were chosen to sit on these Boards of Rights. So the chief recommended in these 30 cases that employee or employees, there could be multiple, for termination, that they no longer represented the organization, that they no longer could perform the essential functions of a law enforcement officer. So the chief, his highest power, recommended them for termination, which then they chose an all-civilian board in all 30 of these cases. And the hearing examiners report to the police commission. They don't report to the department. The police commission hires the hearing examiners and vets them out and goes through that process. There's a long list of folks that are part of that process. I know working with Django and things like that, there's things that I know he's working on with the commission, to better the process. Now, I don't have the exact reasons. There are reports and penalties and rationales that have to be written per the Board of Rights manual at the conclusion of the Board of Rights. We can then follow up, as we do, I think, with Django, is we explain and talk to him about some of these cases that we're mentioning today, and then that information is shared and discussed for further evaluation of hearing examiners. But that's not the department. The department does not do that. We present the case, and then the hearing examiners make decisions.
Okay, so Django would have the answers to that?
It's very complicated, but we've been working on this for a while, so you need a briefing. Yeah.
Okay, I need a briefing. That's true.
There's a lot in the works. And as they mentioned, City Council is also looking into it.
Yeah, I think, so the big takeaway on this is that there's an understanding that the system needs to be changed, and that is one of the big projects that the department is working with the police commissioners, the inspector general, the labor unions. There's a lot of folks involved trying to enhance the process to make it better and equitable and more transparent so we can have better accountability. So that is in the process as we move into June.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioners?
Thank you. Just kind of dovetailing into the Board of Rights discussion, although the Police Commission may hire some of these Board of Rights folks, this is a city charter issue. The Board of Police Commissioners haven't endorsed this process or think that it's the right process. It's just what is currently mandated by city law. I too share everyone else's concern about the Board of Rights process, including the fact that 50% of people that the police chief has determined are unworthy to wear the badge are continuing to wear the badge. That's a problem in my mind. I think that erodes community trust, and I think it becomes a significant liability on the city as to what to do with these officers after they are returned from the Board of Rights, and what potential future liability is in store for the city. I saw one instance, and I believe you all also publish, for purposes of full transparency, you're publishing monthly reports of the disciplinary results. And I'm glad that you began reporting when the Board of Rights, I believe, are making certain determinations, because I saw one not too long ago where someone had multiple DUIs, including, I think, one on the job, and the chief recommended that person for termination, and the Board of Rights came back with some days of suspension. That's a significant civil liability issue for the city. And so I would ask for a supplemental report that really details, from basically pulling from what you've done for your monthly reports, pulling all of the different, at least the allegations, what the chief recommended, and what the Board of Rights did for both the Board of Rights directed and the opted. I'd like to see what are these types of things that the board is going a different way on. And I think that supplemental report can help inform the city council so that they see it more clearly. Because this, I won't know exactly what the allegations are. Here, they're just numbers. I don't know exactly why the chief wanted certain terminations. And maybe there's a chance that the chief gets it wrong. I don't know, Chief. I think you do a pretty good job. But I don't think he's wrong half the time. And so I think it would be helpful to have a report that just specifically lays out what was the seriousness of the allegations that were posed and what did the Board of Rights do. And I think that can help inform the decision. I also would like, and I think this would be better in a smaller working group where I can get a little bit more detail on some of the allegations from 2024. I'm particularly concerned about whether or not this is the proper avenue to handle workplace disputes. I think there may be a better creative way of handling workplace disputes than the typical complaint system. As I say often to people who will listen, every workplace has workplace disputes. Not every workplace has the Professional Standards Bureau to investigate it. There may be other ways of handling workplace disputes that are more conducive to resolving the issue quickly and timely and in the moment and not letting it fester. And I think that also can help with civil liability down the road. So I'd like to set up some separate time potentially with PSB and the Inspector General's office to go over, really I see you all have basically like 3 buckets: the public complaints, the department complaints, most of that is like the neglect of duty type of thing, and then the workplace issues. And I think each of them have their own concerns, and I'd like to hear more about potential ways of, or recommendations that are coming out about changing the discipline process. But I think there will be a way to both fix it where I think at this stage, officers don't feel like they're being treated fairly. The public doesn't feel like they're being treated fairly. Yet you all are working nonstop trying to get it right, and it's a lot of work. If there's better ways to streamline it and making sure everyone feels more satisfied with the process, I think that would help. And I am a huge fan of the mediation and alternative conflict resolution. If there are more ways that we can be increasing that, both for internal complaints and external complaints, I think there can be significant benefit there to kind of catching things quickly before they fester. So thank you.
Commissioner Shields, can I add? I agree to your point about the employee complaints. I mean, if you just look at the numbers, we have potentially 1 complaint per employee, right? That's or more, because we have like 11,000 complaints. But I was wondering, as you start looking at the process, what role does ERG have? So we potentially have so many different levels of like how to report, so looking at, does ERG have a role in the employee complaints, and where does that come in? I think that's something, I don't know if you could even provide some insight, but I think it's also something to look at.
So we began about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years, of trying to reevaluate workplace complaints and trying to really address issues and concerns immediately with the utilization of the city attorneys, Sergeant Jerry Contreras. There's our workplace section along with the captains, and the work goes in of the vetting, the talking to commands, talking to captains, identifying issues really quickly that could be minor to start, but then fester into major lawsuits, a year or 2 later. So there's not like an immediate complaint that's taken. There's a lot of vetting that goes on with the commander and myself. We're brought in very, very early on these cases. We work with our Office of Constitutional Policing and Policy and ERG and the city attorneys to talk and discuss the issues at hand to try to get some corrective action, whether it's moving an employee. So I guess what I'm saying is we're not necessarily hardcore taking a complaint and that's going to be the end all, because that doesn't fix a problem in a workplace when you have multiple folks. We're in the process of looking at doing things differently right now with the labor unions and trying to bring in a third party. I think, Commissioner, you mentioned that, of bringing in, I'm not going to say an HR, but maybe someone independent that can come in and evaluate so people feel independence and they can talk freely and we can resolve issues. Not thinking you have a command staff and people are afraid of retaliations and all the things that come into that. So there are a lot of different avenues and things we're exploring, but we agree if we can go in a different direction and provide better support for our employees, because that's what it comes down to, and sometimes people just want to be heard. We are willing, and we always talk about it, but I think with the assistance of the police commission, and we would like to go to that route, and I think everything's on the table, and we're willing to look at different avenues.
So one of the things that we are using more frequently now is our workplace investigation sections assessment process. So if we get not an allegation, but if we get, they report to us that there may be some issues in the workplace, we'll immediately have investigators respond to that division, conduct interviews to see if it rises to the level of misconduct. If it doesn't, recommendations would be made to the commanding officer to either speak to the employee, try to mediate between the parties, or the ombuds office. So there is an immediate process where we try to stop what's going on before it festers too much and that does actually become a complaint.
I think if I can add to that, there was before everyone worked in independent silos. You had the ombuds conducting their independent review of workplace issues. You have internal affairs working and trying to look at different avenues. What we've brought together is better collaboration between ombuds and internal affairs to really feel what we have. And Commander Steve Ramos has done a great job with the ombuds folks that he has of getting into the workplace. We can always do better, but get in and assess and try to put out these small fires before they turn big. And I think under Dave's leadership, we are working toward that with our workplace section and the ombuds. Now, you keep things independent, but you still can communicate and figure out what the issues are at hand, and then bring in, a third party or bring in folks that are more experienced, like BSS, and folks that we have internally here in the organization. But I've been in the seat for four and a half years now. We didn't operate like that. Everyone was independent silos. I think using the resources we have, we can put out some of these issues that are major to a lot of folks that are involved in these. So I think to all those points, it's a work in progress. I think we've taken great strides with the resources we have today to try to combat some of this, to ensure that employees are being heard, that they feel that they're represented, because that's the last thing we want is someone to feel that they're not being heard and the department doesn't care. We do hear that a lot in our different rounds that we make. And that's the last thing we ever want to hear, is that we want employees to freely come forward and talk about what is concerning to them. And that's what we're willing to do, and I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, thank you for the report. I also want to follow up on sort of the internal complaints and just the scale of them. Not only scale in terms of individuals, but scale in terms of potential costs to the department. And I would want to, the chief recently mentioned it in an interview, looking at a potential HR approach, right? The traditional human resource approach. And so I like what you had said, or what you're saying in terms of looking at different options. I would also not eliminate the option of someone internally. I would recommend civilian professional structure, but that lives within the department, and it's not a consultant who comes in and potentially doesn't have an ongoing full-time relationship with that division and the officers within that division. And I really think that goes beyond just the internal complaint lens, but looking at the culture of a division, the overall wellness of that division and the officers in the division, and hopefully that translates into a healthy officer who has healthier interactions with the community. Thinking about how robust we can make that within every division is important. You look at any corporation, the human resource function is a critical part of the organization. It's not an afterthought, and it is so not to just prevent fires from happening, but or not just to catch the small fires. So it's not just a harm reduction, but it's to prevent some of those fires, and again to hopefully encourage and see a result of a healthier career for the officers that are in the departments. Definitely encourage looking at that.
Thank you. Commissioner Sanchez-Gordon, go ahead.
I just want to follow up with the Commissioner's comment and have this question. In the workplace assessment process that you spoke about involving the ombudsman and internal affairs to determine the level of misconduct, have you seen, using that type of process, that the filed litigations in the court have reduced, or do you see any change, or have they increased? Is it working, in other words?
Commissioner, I would just note that most of the litigation that's currently ongoing came out of 2020, 21, 2022 complaints. And the process that the captain spoke of is relatively recent. So I'm not sure that we would necessarily have the results showing in the litigation numbers or decrease in litigation numbers quite yet.
Okay, if you go back to that, to those years, I understand, but do you foresee that this new process that you've implemented is one of the plus factors of that is to reduce the amount of litigation and the amount of money that the organization is paying out in lawsuits?
Absolutely, I believe so. We've done 12 command-directed remediations, if you will, where we identified an issue that didn't rise to the level of misconduct, but was a small, little festering issue. We had the command address it and report back to us with how they addressed it, and then we have gotten follow-up from the employees who were involved in it. And the feedback so far is very, very positive that it was a fix to a solution that otherwise might have resulted in litigation.
Thank you.
Okay, I was going to direct my question to the folks in here with a lot of hash marks, but there's a lot of folks with a lot of hash marks. So I'll do it this way. My understanding is when the Office of Constitutional Policing and Policy stood up, there was a risk management component to that took a look at accusing employee complaints because they were at such a high level and had some degree of success in identifying trends and patterns to mitigate that. Is that true? And if it is true, are we still doing that?
So I believe we've gotten back to doing that. I can't speak for what the office under leadership of Chief Moore was doing and what missions and what jobs that they were tasked with at the time. But when I was a captain assigned to risk management, it was a while ago, that was one of the processes, one of the fundamental jobs as the captain at risk management division was to evaluate complaints, was to look at complaints, identify patterns and trends, and then try to provide some avenues to deal with and handle those. You know, sometimes from my experience of reviewing complaints, a lot of folks tend to not want to be confrontational. They don't want to address issues. They're very, nothing is minor to the employee that is complaining. There's something significant that is occurring. But if we do a better job of addressing it on hand as our supervision, sergeants and above, usually it's first level of supervision that deals with these and encounters these, and they have avenues to call and utilize risk management division to handle and provide resources, provide advice to handle a difficult situation, we may see better results on the legal side. But yes, I believe Office of Constitutional Police and Policy, when it was stood up years ago, one of the fundamental missions was to assess risk management, liability, pursuits, complaints, a whole bunch of stuff. And so if done correctly and we have enough personnel that can evaluate and review, it could be something that could be beneficial to the organization because it's an avenue that can provide resources and guidance to other commands per se, and to the chief to help, to make recommendations and get advice regarding different things that are occurring in each area. So yes, I mean, from my experience, it's a very beneficial if utilized properly.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Okay, they do. Hearing none, I do want to make sure I have this clear. So Vice President Shields, you want a supplemental report. Should that be in addition to this one? Can we approve this report, or do we want to wait till we get the supplemental to approve it all?
I think we can approve this report. I would just ask for a supplemental that it could be just relating to Board of Rights results for 2024 that lays out the specific allegations, what the chief had recommended, and what the outcome was.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner, did you also request a working group?
That's something that I will talk to Chief Rimkunis and the Inspector General's office about doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then I move that we approve the department's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Thank you for the work you do. The commission will now recess into closed session. Thank you.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item number 5A, 1, and 2 in accordance with Government Code 54957.
The commission has completed closed session. We'll have a readout by Executive Director Sibley. Mr. Sibley.
Thank you, Mr. President. With respect to item 5A 1 and 2, which were heard by the Board of Police Commissioners in closed session, both matters were adjudicated, and that concludes the report out.
Thank you. I move that today's meeting be adjourned. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.